Internet. How are we doing today? Truly, 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 how are we doing today? From me to you, I want to give you that space and I want to give you that validation while we sit here and ask ourselves, how are we doing? I'm exhausted. I am so tired, but I don't know what the fuck is wrong with my eyebrows. Like, why does this? I think I was rubbing this eye, so that's why that side looks really swollen. My doggy's right here. Wants me to pet him during this video. I wanted to talk about in this episode of the Creating Conversation podcast. I wanted to talk about this idea of over therapizing ourselves. And I saw a TikTok of somebody interviewing folks on the subway talking about how, do we live in an over therapized society, and this sort of innuendo of always doing the work, always trying to emotionally get better, always trying to psychoanalyze ourselves, fix ourselves, and then it's what's next, And I think this is true for a decent amount of people. I don't want to generalize and say everybody, but I think the self-awareness that Gen Z and even some millennials experience is very different than I think older generations. I think we definitely aren't going to subjugate ourselves to this put your head down and work mentality. And I think a lot of us experience this idea about listening to our body and listening to our internal rather than kind of taking the safety route, whether that's, putting a job over your emotions or overall just really trying to value your internalness. And I think this really stuck with me because as somebody who's been in therapy their whole life and as somebody who I think finds comfort in the psychoanalysis of things, I think that there's also this parallel of different generations experiencing perfectionism and what that perfectionism means. And I think they're still parallel, in the sense boomers and Gen Xers, really grinded out, and that was their level of perfection, of working yourself to death. Whereas I think our concepts and ideas of perfection is that psychoanalysis. And I think it's important to understand that maybe we're taking a different route, but I think we're still getting to this point of not necessarily what's next, but what is satisfactory, right? Because I've said in other videos, the self-work is something that happens for a lifetime. And that's what I was talking to my Aunt Diane about. My Aunt Diane and I were having these conversations about life, and she was talking about her sermon at her church, bless her soul, but she was complimenting me because he was saying that things that I was telling her earlier this week about your mind and the way that you talk to yourself is your livelihood. And I want to connect us to kind of this therapeutic generation, because I think, one, I'm given those skills to be able to do that, but two, it begs this question of what then does it mean to be then finished with your work, right? Like, what does it mean when you like do the work? Like, what's next? And I think sometimes it's in that mentality, it's like we still have to remember that we need to like live in the moment. And just because maybe we did the work, we sat with our emotions, we didn't vice ourselves out, we had the difficult conversation with a friend, we had the honest conversation with ourselves, you know, you still need to let yourself be present. And I think when you're so stuck in who, what, when, where, why, you can't let yourself do that. So it's like you can't integrate what you learned. And I think there's a lot, I mean, there are also a lot of like rehabilitative programs like AA, the 12 steps, right? Like you can be going to meetings, you can be doing that work, but at the end of the day, you're cheating on your wife, or you know what I mean? Like there's, just because you're in certain environments doesn't mean you're doing the work, right? And so, you know, and again, like I've said in other videos and like I'm repeating myself now, like this is a lifetime's thing. There isn't just like one be all end all. And I think instead of that being like, okay, let's push forward onto the next thing, it's like, well, what's the little victory here? And in my education and harm reduction, little victories should be celebrated, and that is restorative, that you are giving yourself the opportunity to say, wow, I did something different. Wow, I see this now. Wow, I made a change. And that is enough. Maybe tomorrow you take 2 steps backward. Maybe then the next day after that you take 3 steps forward. I think also it's like, you know, just because you have this realization or you did something right this next time and then maybe you flop the next, like that's literally the work. Like we can't strive for like this perfect, oh, I'm so self-aware, I'm so blah, 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 because then you tunnel yourself and you're not letting yourself really absorb your environment and being honest with yourself. Because if you're so concerned with in not even perception, but in the which way, sometimes that blinds you from being able to just do it. And as somebody who, again, has been in therapy my whole life, my degree in education is in harm reduction and social justice and social change, right? Like, I think it's really easy to get caught up in how things work than just doing it. And I think sometimes we don't let ourselves just do it because we are trying to do it this X kind of way. And when you're learning about yourself, when you're being honest with yourself, when you're being honest with yourself about things that you personally want to change, when you're being honest with yourself about the way that you've absorbed existing, you know, whether that's in trauma, whether that's in taking care of yourself, whether that's in how you view yourself, how you function in relationships, like, you know, you have to put all of that knowledge and that awareness into action and into your daily livelihood, because it's one thing to talk about it, but you have to do it. And I think if we did it more than we talked about it, maybe we wouldn't be so stuck in this like who, what, when, where, why. And again, I was even saying in the beginning of the video, I find pleasure in doing that. And I have based a lot of my relationships in that kind of banter. And I've realized that all of those relationships that I have based that like psychoanalysis, crazy analyzation about the world, about myself, about my friendships, coincidentally, have not been solid people in my life. And I don't say that to be like, if you're doing that with your friends, they're not real people. But I think that there's a difference in talking about it and doing it, right? And I've realized that in the last kind of 6 months of my life, not even like 4, I'm going to workout classes and taking care of myself and putting myself in situations and environments where people are self-investing. I walked away from an environment that I knew isn't going to put me in a position where where I want to achieve what I want to achieve in life, right? Like, I have been taking all of these risks, and I think that's the work, is like not being afraid of failure, and like even accepting if like, okay, I went to this workout class, and then what? Like, I gossiped or complained. You know what I mean? I mean, that's not a good example, but like, multiple things are true at the same time. Like, you can be taking care of yourself and you can be doing the work. You can also like fall back on your shit, and you know what? You know what? That's fucking okay. And you know what? That's the work. That's the life lesson, because then you fall back and you're like, "Oh, wait." You That's the work of understanding it. Like, we can talk about it all day and it can be our banter, but then you have to do it, you know? And if you are in an environment where you're having these kind of conversations with your friends and you're then doing the work, all of the motherfucking power to you. All the all the motherfucking power to you. Guys, I'm so sorry. I'm so tired, and my ADHD is like, whoa. So I like need to play with this comb while I'm doing this story time or whatever the fuck this video is turned into. But sorry, I needed a 2-second little breaky break to. I just want you to know that you are enough right now in this very moment. Even if you were mean to somebody today, even if you made somebody laugh today, like, you are enough. And I think in this sort of like era of like self reflection, I think you have to be honest with yourself. And I think you need to celebrate the little victories. And nothing is ever going to be perfect. Like, you are going to fuck up. You are going to make mistakes. You need to befriend your mistakes. You need to befriend your failures. Because if you just shame yourself over and over and over and over and over again about the wrong choices you've made, about you hurting people, you're never going to be able to move on. You're never going to be able to advance yourself. You're going to be repeating the same cycle every 6 months of your whole goddamn life. And so I just really challenge and I champion anybody that stayed this long in this video to honor yourself, honor your feelings, honor your bad feelings, honor your mistakes, honor your victories, honor your success. Like, even if that means you took a walk today, like, I think we really need to push ourselves. Like, I think too, it's like the over therapizing. It's like pushes us into like this negative mindset. And that's what I'm trying to get away from, because then you're never going to change if like we're inherently shaming ourselves, whether we're consciously aware or not. And I think fear and shame are such inhibitors to stopping us from living and just not existing, right? Because we're not living in a present mindset when all we're doing is reflecting and then shaming ourselves for doing something wrong or not the right way. Because there's not a right way to necessarily do something, right? Like, people get, like, even the beginning of this video, of this parallel that I was trying to draw of like every generation has its way of shaming itself, even if that's kind of like perpetrated as this way of existing and the right way to do something, right? Like, I was trying to kind of articulate earlier, having your head down and working. Like, even though you're not listening to your body and you're hurting yourself, maybe emotionally or mentally, you're making money. I think today it's kind of the exact opposite of that. I think folks don't care about the money that they're making, but then they're psychoanalyzing themselves so hard to, they're still rooting themselves in shame because they're not really letting themselves feel what they're feeling, instead of they're just analyzing it and not really being present with it, you know? I think I'm definitely going to make another video, but I just wanted to put this out there because I think it's important to be honest with ourselves. I think it's important to understand that, like, there are many roads to the same outcome. And I think we should learn from what older folks have done and not necessarily just do the opposite, because that doesn't mean that we're going to find success, you know? Yeah. That's my video today, guys. That's my ramble. I put my makeup mirror in front of my, well, in the back of my computer. To do some lighting. Try to get some better lighting. But so much love, and until next time.